Everybody, it is 12 o'clock and I see that people are still coming on. I think we're going to get started because we have a lot to share today. I'm going to start us out by just introducing myself and the panelists and Evolve and sort of providing a framework for this conversation. And then I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed panelists. My name is Amy Schiffman. I am president and CEO at Evolve Giving Group. We were actually founded this month, which is very exciting. I was also co-founder and principal at Giving Tree Associates from 2008 to 2020. Evolve is a consulting firm based in Chicago, serving nonprofits across North America of all shapes and sizes. We even have some nonprofits that we serve abroad. For those of you who knew us at Giving Tree, Evolve is most certainly an evolution of the work that I and members of my team did there. But we are really excited to take that work and those partnerships to the next level with the services we provide, which are really focused in the areas of campaign planning and development, strategic planning, executive recruiting and talent development, board and leadership development, and philanthropic advising. Of the services that we provide, I would say that campaign development is far and away in the highest demand. And especially during a time when the world feels very uncertain and our futures feel very uncertain, thinking about how we will continue to sustain that work in the nonprofit world with smart, strategic, forward-thinking fundraising strategies is really all about what we do. And that's why we have worked to provide webinars and a webinar series at no cost to our clients, former clients, friends of the organization, in order to help us discover what is available, what is possible, what are the best practices out there. And we have invited some of the best talent in the field to share their thoughts and their experiences and their strategies with you today. And so we thank them for being part of this conversation. I'm going to share, again, a few additional framing thoughts to get us started. I've been spending some time looking at CAP America's May survey, where they looked at 880 nonprofits from across the US. 94% report being negatively impacted by the global pandemic. I don't think that that number will surprise you. Over 70% have seen significant decreases in contributions. 15% have been forced to suspend operations altogether, which is very sad. And more than 60% forced to eliminate or suspend some of their regular program services and events. So the question is, what are we doing about it? What can we do about it? 61% of these nonprofits have reduced operational costs. More than 60% of the nonprofits surveyed have added new fundraising campaigns in order to deal with this crisis. 38% of the contributions to these nonprofits in the past month alone have come from long-term donors, and over 8% from new donors. So when we think about what is available to us, it seems to me that most of us, that more than half of us, are developing fundraising campaigns to confront these challenges and maybe rethinking our case for support. And so I'm really interested in what our panelists have to say today about how we do that, how we confront that. Let me introduce them to you and tell you a little bit more about how this conversation is going to work. Julio Paz serves as Chief Development Officer at Chicago Commons, an organization providing early childhood education, family-centered adult education, and senior services to more than 3,000 individuals annually. Prior to joining Chicago Commons, Julio served in leadership positions at the Resurrection Project, Mercy Housing, and Project Exploration. Jenni Rook is the Executive Director of Institute for Therapy Through the Arts, based in Evanston and serving 1,500 clients each year through art, dance movement, drama, and music therapy. Jenni is a board-certified music therapist and licensed clinical professional counselor. That's a mouthful. Jennifer Phillips is an accomplished special education professional with more than 25 years of experience in classroom, recreational, and residential settings. She is currently acting chief executive officer at Keshet, an agency serving over 1,000 children and adults with intellectual challenges annually at over 70 sites throughout the Midwest. Thank you, panelists, for being here. Each of our panelists is going to speak for several minutes, giving you a sense of how their organization has confronted fundraising and capacity building and sustainability challenges over the past couple of months, and even reflect on what they're planning to do over the next few months ahead. Then I will open up the floor, and I will be checking the Q&A box, the chat box, but please try and put them in the Q&A box, your questions throughout the session. And we may pause to take questions, but we'll most certainly answer a bunch of your questions at the end of the session. If we do not get to all of the questions, we promise to respond to them in writing. And my team is also offering complimentary 30-minute coaching sessions with our team after the event, after this session. And I think I speak for the three panelists that if you have, you can just nod if this is true, that they would also be willing to answer your questions after the session if they talk about a program or a service or an appeal that you want to know more about. I'm sure that we can link the two of you directly. On that note, Julio, did I pronounce your last name correctly? I've been angsting about this morning. Yes?
Yeah, that was fine. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about what's going on at Chicago Commons.
Sure. And thank you, Amy and the Evolve team, for inviting me to be part of today's important conversation. And also a hat tip virtually to my colleagues who are also part of the conversation. And those of you who are on the call today, this is hard work that we're involved in, and we're critical now more than ever. And the work that you all are doing to lead the sector forward and adapt is critically important, and know that you are important, you are valued, and your communities and your clients need you. So just wanted to just start out with that. As Amy mentioned, my name is Julio Paz. I'm the Chief Development Officer over at Chicago Commons. But like many of you, that means I probably wear a million hats, right? The way in which I came to know Evolve Consulting was before me coming to Chicago Commons, the organization had contracted them to do an assessment or a study of the development practice at the agency. We're now 126-year-old institution, and had gone through some tough times through of course, the economic crisis, the state budget crisis, and now, of course, the COVID-19. As part of that study, there was a sort of a recommendation to the organization to hire and staff a development practice much different than what it had done before, to really invest in development, and the idea that you focus on relationships and focus on the idea of strengthening your brand to then build a campaign to help some of the aspirational visions of the organization get materialized. So we one of the recommendations was to do a 125th anniversary campaign, which was a big event in gala. This organization had not celebrated something like that before in recent history. We did it. This was last November, highly successful for our agency, bringing in 500 people and having recognition from the governor, lieutenant governor, the mayor, and whatnot. That was a nice platform for the organization to talk about where it's been and where it's headed. Fast forward into the year ahead, our focus was to continue on that pathway of engagement with our folks and start bringing more of those people that came to that event into our centers and really kind of strengthen those relationships. Well, then, roughly March 15th hit, right? And our agency, we had to, like many of you, shut down programs, many of them going virtual. And on the flip side, some of those that were still in operation, ended up still providing services. We have a home visiting program for seniors where we have roughly about 550 employees who are out every day supporting the health and wellness of seniors across the entire Chicagoland region. And it became a pivot for our team. And I said to them, now's the time not to retrench. Now's the time to go even further. Now's the time to let people know how we're adapting. Now's the time to let people know what we need. Now's the time to check in on them to see what they need. And so We stayed the course with regards to donor engagement, donor development, and it was wonderful. We bought our, everyone's seen the bullseye charts of your donors. In my opinion, we brought our donors closer to the center and made them more core to the agency and let them know, really treated them like stakeholders and shareholders, and let them know along the way to join us in this journey. I think there was a lot of hesitation. Is this a sensitive time or not to ask? And we went out and we just did. And what's the worst that could happen? Folks would say no, that's okay, but we knew our families needed it. And so we decided to do it. At the time, we knew we were going to lose a golf outing, which provides roughly about $180,000 in revenue to the agency. That's a big hit. And we ended up launching a COVID-19 campaign, which we pivoted to, ended up raising close to $250,000 in private grants, plus a number of other public grants for the agency to help us get the necessary supplies and materials that were needed in order to service families, everything from direct assistance in food, PPE, all across the board, even providing emergency assistance to families who lost work. Along the way, we continued that pathway of engagement. We hosted, in effect, 2 town halls along the way, letting them know how our efforts are going, sort of a Zoom call like this, letting them come in and ask questions. And over and resoundingly was more the response we got was how can we help, right? Can we help you with money? Can we help you with supplies? And many of our donors are connected to contracting firms and whatnot. Many of them have access to the different kind of PPE supplies, and they then turn around and donated those kinds of things. They participated in efforts to again improve the health and safety of seniors and those who were supporting them. And it was really really emotional and supportive for our staff. It continues. Our young adults board is hosting a virtual trivia night next week on Tuesday. They're, with that money, they're buying gift cards for families who have lost work, cannot buy groceries and that kind of thing. So it's really a opportunity, again, as I go back to, the goal was to focus on relationship building. We kept doing that and we brought them in closer to us. And looking to next year, we postponed our golf outing. All indications are for us to continue with that outing in the fall, which would be tremendously helpful, and in some effect, make up for some lost revenue. And then along the way, I would say even with your corporate foundation institutional donors, picking up the phone and letting them know what's going on, whether it be COVID, responses in the wake of the killing of George Floyd, bringing people in and letting them know, because you're helping them. You're also helping them kind of contextualize what communities are facing and how institutions can provide support. So that in effect is sort of the effort we led, and we're still in the middle of it. So I look forward to coming back in the future and sharing more, responding to any questions folks might have.
Thanks so much. Jenni, tell us what is going on at Institute for Therapy Through the Arts.
Sure. Well, similar things. We're all trying to figure out how to do our work and to bring it to more people in an online platform. So we've been working to do that. With our organization, we're fortunate to have earned revenue and contributed revenue coming in. And so not being able to run all of our programs really hurts that ability to bring in that program revenue. Also, our case for support typically doesn't have a sense of urgency attached to it. So when we're fundraising, it's sort of fundraise the same things that we always do. We provide individual and group therapy in our clinic sites and throughout the Chicagoland community. Now with the pandemic, we feel like we actually do have a sense of urgency, and we can shift our case for support to focus more on the things that are emerging, the problems that are emerging because of the pandemic and the shelter in place. So initially when this all started, we found that our donors and the foundations who fund us were really taking all of their funds and allocating them toward basic human needs. And I mean, food and shelter, the things that were, really emergent and important. We focus more on mental health and development. And to me, those are basic human needs as well, but there wasn't that sense of urgency to fund those. Now it's the time. Now we feel like it is a time to pay attention to the ramifications of sheltering in place for so long, the social isolation, the impact it's had on mental health. And we need to really treat people and their whole selves, and now really pay attention to all of the things that humans need. So we have a sense of urgency now that we didn't have before. So I guess that's a silver lining for fundraising for us. Also, we're thinking about, we've been tracking everything since day one. So every session that was canceled because of COVID, every new expense that we had, like purchasing telehealth licenses for our staff, external cameras and microphones and things that people needed to do therapy. Now reopening, thinking about all of those supplies that weren't in budget that we need to reopen our clinic. So we have a financial urgency as well. So for those donors who have been with us for a long time that really want to see the organization succeed, they'll be interested in funding those things that help us maintain our sustainability. And so the lost revenue and the additional expenses, the financial impact, you know, they're willing to step up and help us so that we can continue to carry on running in such a limited capacity right now, where we are hoping that with our event coming up and really focusing on the impact of the pandemic on people and not just their physical health, that we can also engage new donors in a new community in understanding that there is an urgency to fund people's mental health and development, especially people who haven't had their therapy for maybe 10 or 12 weeks or something like that because they couldn't access telehealth. So we focused our virtual fundraiser that's coming up in July really on fundraising because we want to continue to provide services during this crazy time, the pandemic, and understanding that it's not going away anytime soon and that our organization isn't going to function like it did last year, probably for a long time. So really focusing on shifting that case for support, also documenting everything that we're doing, you know, taking photos and videos whenever we can to really show our donors that we were resilient, we were able to continue to operate during this time, and we used their dollars really intentionally. We also started to roll out free programs. We started kind of expanding what we would typically do, which is therapy sessions. They're very confidential, private. We decided to have more auxiliary programming. So we did some Facebook live streams. We had a Mindfulness Monday and a Tune In Tuesday. They were free, and it just allowed us to put content out there to support individuals and families during this time, especially when they were at home by themselves or with their children. And there was some solicitation for gifts, not really. It was sort of just in passing, like if you want to give to support our programs, that's great. But another silver lining we experienced was that we were able to reach all of these people who weren't in our geographical area. Now we could really, you know, invite people from California to come to Tune In Tuesday and check out, you know, some of the things that we can do for children. So thinking about stewardship during this time has been really important for us because we did put fundraising on hold a bit, kind of gearing up for this event, which would be the first time we were really soliciting kind of in a larger scale. But really thinking about making contact with our donors and being able to engage the community in new and unique ways. And then to talk about stewardship, we were very fortunate in that when this started in March, we kind of shut our doors on March 17th. I had a donor contact me who funded, she's funded our organization, and she also funds a program that we run, and she's very passionate about that program, and had called to see what we were going to do about the program and the program staff who weren't going to have work. And this is someone I've had a relationship with for a really long time. And I said, I'm really thinking about the organization as a whole. I'm worried about making payroll. I don't want to lay everybody off right away, but we don't have any work for people to do in the next couple of weeks. We didn't even have telehealth ready to go, you know. And so I gave her a ballpark figure, you know, of what payroll would cost, and a couple payrolls, and kind of, you know, what we might need to get through the next month or two while we figured things out. And she called me back and told me she was going to give double the amount that I had told her that I thought we might need. So yeah, so that really gave us some breathing room. And that's the largest single gift that she had ever given to us. So I think it just goes to show that those long existing relationships, those people who are really invested in your organization, just want to see us succeed, and support us in any way that they can. So.
Thanks, Jenni. That's an exciting story, and certainly speaks to the stewardship of that relationship and how that, sometimes really does pay off. Thank you. Before I take some, and we do have a couple questions, but Jen, I'm gonna turn things over to you, and then I will share some of the questions. Tell us about what's happening at Keshet.
Great. So it's kind of crazy in a time where, we're not in person. Our programming has become so robust. And, we have like 4 different program areas that have really taken things to the next level. We're an organization that serves individuals from the age of 3 to 100, as we say now, forever. And, our camp and rec programs, which is our biggest programming, we just went right into gear, offering a virtual programming to everyone, being able to engage our community. We're all about our mission and community and inclusion. And so we were able to do that right away. Our day school kicked into gear. The other day, we were adding up minutes, and we noticed that we had like 6,300 minutes of service hours that we were able to provide to our students throughout this time. Which is incredible. And also our adult day program, where, we were out in the community doing things, never really had that robust curriculum. We put together all this new curriculum for everyone. And every single day there's hours and hours of choices. And as we talk about, again, our mission about, really developing independence and making choices, our adults are able to make choices about what they're doing still through this. And our residential program. We have 3 different homes, and we've always dreamed of them being kind of a community together. And through this time, we have had wake-up calls in the morning and programming during the day and good night calls, and we have weekend activities, Shabbat services, and it has brought them together as a community like never before. And so we're so excited as we've been reopening our homes this week for them to kind of come together. What was interesting is as we started to call donors during this time, they thought that we were like closed and shut down. And when we started talking about what we were doing, there was such excitement around it. And they wanted to be able to make sure that they were actually giving to us and that they were supporting us and finding out if we're going to be okay, we're paying staff and all of that, which was really, really cool. So I think that was like the first step to really engaging who we are. And that they really knew that we were doing what we always talk about, providing for our families. And so there was such excitement around that. And that being said, we have always been an organization that has been geared towards event planning. We have a big dinner every year. We have a big concert. We have some other, events that we do. But our dinner, which, typically we have between 1,200 and 1,400 people a year, it is a social event. It is an event that, brings our community together. And so no one's wanted to ever see it go away, which I don't ever want to see it go away either. But, as we were working with Evolve for, a couple of years, some of their thoughts were, we kind of have to move away from some of this event planning because the amount of hours that go into it and that people were giving to the dinner, they were giving to our concert, but they weren't necessarily giving to the organization as a whole. And so this crisis has forced us, or I don't know, forced, but it was nice to be able to start to focus on a real campaign and moving away from some of those event planning. We needed to make sure that we were going to make up the loss between our dinner and our concert. And so we are having this summer campaign, which we're in full gear for right now, as in pre-week. We've been making calls to donors. They are so, so excited about a campaign that is really focused on having our donors be Keshet-centric and really giving for the mission and giving for what we stand for and who we are. the response has been great. We've been having these pre-calls, asking our donors what they feel about this, especially, people who've been with us for 38 years since the first day we started. And there is excitement around it. And, we're talking about that this is going to be a campaign that's peer-to-peer, so that our families can reach out to their friends and families, so that our staff who have been so engaged during this time, they can reach out to people and do that peer-to-peer. I think, it's crucial. We talk a lot about us being a Keshet community and a Keshet family. And during this time, that has pushed us to another level. And so I feel that, this campaign, also the excitement around it, and even though we're doing something totally different and new, and it's not going to feel great at first, I think to some of our longtime donors, I think that in the end, it's going to show how we're coming together even more. And, we're asking for a one-time, a year pledge, a year commitment. So if you gave, 10,000 last year at the dinner and maybe, 5 at the concert, are you willing to pledge 15,000 for this year as we are starting to, kick off this campaign, something that's going to really bring together the community to the next level, just of what is happening with our families who feel as though during this time they become part of the Keshet family, even though they might have been in programs and they've heard about being part of the Keshet family. This has certainly showed that we really are a Keshet family and that people want to give to that. And they're going to be the ones out there too. So it's not just about our donors, it's also about our families who have outreach and our staff. But, where we thought we might have been 2 years from now or 18 months from now with moving away from event planning, and that we're able to do this, I think it's kind of a blessing. And there's just so much excitement around it right now. So we're excited.
That's great. Yes, I have heard this from many organizations, that this is an opportunity to do something they have been meaning and wanting and needing a push to do for many years, which is really focused on relationships over events, and develop a relationship with the organization rather than the relationship with the event. Don't get me wrong, events can be fantastic tools for fundraising and for friend building. But I do think that sometimes we rely on them a little bit too heavily to achieve our fundraising goals. Okay, thank you, Jen. We're gonna, I know, hear more from you. I do have several questions already from participants. Julio, I think I'm gonna throw this first one to you, and then other Jen and Jenny, tell me if you also want to weigh in here. The question is, since you don't do face-to-face fundraising right now, or since we can't, what is the best way to connect with donors to ask for the gift?
Sure, Amy, happy to answer that. I think for us, it's been, any way a donor, is willing to connect. Phone, if you can do phone. In some cases, we actually sent out a mail appeal, even despite everything going on. I've done Zoom calls with donors to let them know. I mean, I talked about a town hall to get a group of people sort of together in one kind of cohesive group on message, if you will. But we've done face-to-face calls via Zoom with some of our top major donors. It's created that connection point, that how are you doing check-in, allows them to ask kind of questions that they may not feel comfortable asking publicly. And then, as I said before, it creates that space for them to respond and say, well, how can I help? I think, don't wait, do it, reach out. Folks need, I think humanity needs connectivity right now.
Agreed. Jenny, would you say anything else on that question?
No, about the same.
Same. Yeah, I spoke to, I agree. I think there are a lot of solicitations and solicitation related conversations happening via Zoom right now. And what we're hearing is that, what we're hearing from our clients is that donors are available. They are home. They're more available, like someone who it took 3 to 4 weeks to get to in the past. because of their travel and their work schedule and whatever, that we're getting appointments right away, which is exciting. It's not for a great reason, but it's exciting to have that access. I also spoke to an ED yesterday who told me that she was starting to do some backyard visits with donors, offering to come to their house and sit in the backyard 6 feet away, mask on, whatever it is. But I think we're starting to creep out of our houses a little bit. And I agree, Julio. I think we're kind of craving that contact. And I think we have to leave that to the donor, even if we personally are comfortable doing that backyard visit. Obviously, the donor's needs and wants, and depending on the age group and the risk factors, right, still might not be comfortable seeing us, but I think we can offer that if you personally are comfortable. I have another question about best practices for determining the quality of the donor experience, which is critical to retention and loyalty even more so right now. So I think what that question means is, how do we create a quality donor experience right now, given that we can't exactly invite donors to see what we're doing in person, what you might invite them to, and the way you might engage with them in a normal world is very different than what we can share with them right now. So how are we creating that donor experience? Maybe first Jen and then Jenny.
Yeah, I have been inviting donors to come on and participate in some of our Zooms, and they love it, either with the camera on or off, but really seeing what we're doing, because I think it's amazing to be able to actually witness it as we're talking about what our staff, a lot of questions are like, what are your staff doing? You're paying them, what are they doing? And for them to see the work that goes into providing a quality program on Zoom. I also think sending them pictures of, things that are happening and activities. And, we're doing a lot that's not even only Zoom. We have people who are participating in like art shows, virtual art shows through the ARC, and, they've been nominated. So sharing those type of stories with our donors is really, really important. And they love to see that.
Great. Jenny, what do you think about that? You certainly can't invite donors onto your, telemed therapy calls. So, or,
Sure.
or experiences. How do we give the donors a quality experience and a sense of what's happening?
Mm-hmm. I mean, similarly, we're trying to take screenshots of the work. We're getting consent from clients to record pieces of the session.
Oh, that's nice.
We've also put a call out to our clients, and the therapists are reaching out personally for testimonials, if that's appropriate. There's an ethical piece there that has to be considered, but to just see if they feel comfortable speaking about what our work has done for them, especially during this time. When we drastically reduced our sliding scale during the pandemic so that it went down to maybe $5 a therapy session for people at the lowest income bracket. And in response, we didn't solicit these, but we received a lot of quotes that came back saying how grateful they were and what this was going to do for them because we were able to reduce the cost so much. So I think any way that we can communicate the value of the donation, even if they can't see the work. But the other thing we're doing is we're setting up demonstrations too. So gearing up towards our July event, we're going to have 2 programs that run on Facebook Live that Monday and Tuesday evening, where we'll have our music therapist kind of talk and demonstrate some of the work that we do in music therapy, and then an art therapist do the same thing the next evening. So when we have those privacy issues, we can set up kind of those mock scenarios, or at least bring people in an interactive way to show them what the work looks like.
Great. Julio, next one is for you. What role does your board play in fundraising now? And is this different than the role they played prior to the global pandemic?
Sure. So our board, since I've came on board, it's one of the things that the values that I've brought to the board, and they've had this before. They just need our help to help guide them, is around board participation. We need boards to do 3 things: champion the organization in any circles they are at, right? Invite people to get to know the organization, and invest commensurate with their means based on the campaigns that are happening right now. Those are the three things we need board members to do. And so along the way, whether it's just normal course of business or now, immediately our board development chair and our board development committee put the call out to the board and said, well, if we're going to launch this campaign, this relief fund campaign for our organization, we need all of our board members to be involved and invested. And so they gave. And then in addition to that, they shared this broadly within their constituencies, within their companies. A lot of the different companies that they work at started sort of peer-to-peer type giving things where they would match gifts. And so we got them involved in those different ways. We have a young adult leaders board that also was actively engaged. And so, to your point about engagement, every step of the way we're communicating with families and communicating with families and the clients about the changes that are taking place. We went and distilled that message for our donors so they knew that, to Jenni's point about how, programs were taking place and how we were going to keep the efficacy and the impact still happening even in this time. And so I think for many of them, it was that engaging moment where they were able to, again, get closer to the core in the relationship and to get to know what makes us special and different in the landscape and further that engagement.
Great. Jenni, other thoughts about the role that the board has been playing, is being pushed to play? I mean, we have 3 questions about the board role right now, which I can go into, but that seems to be a topic people want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that our board is more engaged now than they've ever been, really wanting to know what's going on within programming. I think that's a big new thing. And I think in reality of wanting to know where help is needed. And so, I've been giving them as much information as I can all the time, but also keeping them up to date with what's also happening, obviously financially, right? And where we're nervous about. For us, we get a lot of state funding. So there's, different tracks of, we're going to get and not get and to what dates and all of that. But I think with this new campaign, again, we're going to be engaging the board for the first time and having them have, peer-to-peer, pages to ask their peers, and that they're going to tell their stories, and they're hearing stories of positive things from not only our participants but from our staff, so that they feel as though they can really go out there and sell why people should give to the organization.
Great. Yeah, I mean, the organizations that we have worked with who are either engaged in or just finished virtual event programs, it seems to us that the success of those programs very heavily hinges on board or committee participation, but really heavily on board, and that that peer-to-peer fundraising, serving as a table host or a team captain or whatever you're going to call it for your organization, is really the differentiator between the organizations that are meeting their goals and the organizations via these events that are falling short of their goals. Is, do we see these really strong, active peer-to-peer fundraising pages where each board member or committee member, host committee member has their own goal with the picture and the thermometer? That stuff works, right? And it really, if they can fill their table, so to speak, that they seem to be hitting their goals. Jenni, anything else you want to say on that topic?
Yeah, well, I'm going to write that one down. So thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we, similarly, I think engaging the board and being really transparent right from the beginning was important. So our executive committee started meeting every other week, and that was at my request because there were so many big decisions to make. If you remember, March, early April, the information on what to do with COVID was coming out like rapid fire, and every day it was different. So it was just like trying to sift through all of that. Are we paying people? Are we not? What, how are we going to structure their time? And So getting them involved in conversations that maybe they wouldn't normally have been in, but considering the unique situation and that we were making decisions that were really going to impact the organization for a long time. I really appreciated their involvement. And then the first solicitation we did was to our board, and we asked them, we had our board chair ask them to step up and, make their annual commitments now rather than wait. There's that urgency for cash flow. And then also we had several board members already give more. The end of our fiscal year is August. So kind of what they've committed to doing, some of them have given more than they had pledged as well. So we really appreciated seeing that commitment.
Great. What do you say to a board member who feels it is inappropriate or insensitive to be out there asking? I've heard from several board members that maybe one board member at the table puts that out there to the rest of the board in the Zoom board meeting, that this is a bad time and we're going to sound tone deaf if we try and fundraise right now. And so this is the time now to hang back and let the frontline charities do their work and collect those dollars. What do you say to a board member who's not in favor of moving forward with major gift solicitations or solicitations of any kind?
We tell them that Amy said it's okay to ask.
That's right.
We really did. I think hearing that, and in the beginning, I think we did have that disadvantage, but now, this is the time to ask. And I think our board finally sees that too, that people are compelled to help. We always tell our board that you're presenting people with an opportunity to really make a difference in the lives of other people. So it's not a favor. You're giving them this option to do something really wonderful. And right now, the world really needs a lot of help.
Yeah, and I also think, everyone thinks everyone's out of jobs and that and this, but there's actually a reality that people have more work now, and they may even have more potential to give. And I think people have come together during this time. We all have, as an entire community and world, right, that we want to help others. And if it's true to what they feel they're giving to and what we're doing, and I think it opens the door for more people to give than even gave before. And so telling, a board member that you can tell the story of what's happening and going on, and look how great it would be to give to this organization that's going strong now and doing good things.
And Amy, I'll just add to that is, certainly, when a board member speaks, that's a powerful voice. And so having a counter voice who you can partner with at the board that is able to respond to that and share what, Jen and Jenni, what's the message is important. What's also important is the messenger. And so as long as you have some advocates on the board who get it, who understand it, and are able to provide the education and awareness that, to Jen's point, now's a great time, for folks who care about your agency are going to want to know what's going on, and they're going to want to support, right? And so you might be denying, as Jenni was saying, an opportunity for someone to get closer to your mission in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you all tell us about some of the conversations you're having with your institutional funders, with foundations? Some of our clients have seen doors open up for them. Others have heard that there is no new funding out there. If you weren't getting funding before, you're not getting anything new, no new dollars. What's happening right now? And maybe Jen, you could sort of take this, tell us about how Keshet is I'm actually interested from all three of you. How are you handling your relationships with your institutional funders?
Yeah, I mean, we've been staying in close contact, and, actually we've received a lot of emergency funding from our foundations. And so I think some of that was, through our Jewish Federation. There's been a group of foundations that have come together to give, and they're foundations that we typically do get money from. We've gotten we actually got new money from a new foundation that we've never gotten from before. So I think it's important, again, during these times to continue to tell them what we're doing. And so they've been asking, and they asked in the beginning when we first contacted them about, where we were and what our journey is going to be during this time. And so we've been making sure to update them. But we've also felt as though they are pushing us to continue to apply for next year, and that they're moving forward with everything, and so that's a positive. And the positive is also we've gotten this emergency funding, and some of the foundations have actually said that during this time they've given us a little leniency with some of the requirements. So it's been pretty positive with the foundations for us.
Good. Julio, anything to add to that?
Sure, and I agree. I think bringing them close in the same way you would a major donor, letting them know what's happening, letting them know what staff and clients are facing. As I said earlier, you have an opportunity to inform the way in which they frame their emergency response, because you're probably one of several different grantees in their portfolio, and maybe some of those other grantees have not reached out. And so maybe they can then be proactive and reach out to some other groups. We've heard, as Jen was saying, about flexibility. We've gotten invitations for new funding. We've seen a few surprise increases in gifts, which is wonderful. And I think it speaks to sort of the leadership on the foundation side, where there's some awareness about some of the challenges, and that now's not the time to retrench. Now's the time to go in a little bit deeper. And I think that has been particularly helpful.
Jen, anything to add to that? Yeah.
Yeah, the experiences, we've had our, one of our funders basically say, sorry, you spent a long time on this grant application, but we're only going to really fund, crisis response, basic human needs, so we're kind of throwing those out the window. You wrote those in a different world, in a different time. And that wasn't committed funds, but the other foundations who have committed to funding us are continuing to do that for the initiatives that they had set out to fund. So, some of those are capacity building, that we're expected to use that money to build capacity right now, which is interesting to think about, and another one is we have some funding to develop a major gifts program. And so those donors or those foundations intend to continue to have us use those dollars for those purposes. It's been tricky to find new sources of funding because we were one of the fortunate nonprofits who did get a PPP loan and had some cash flow. And so the applications we were seeing were really asking for kind of dire need, right? To really communicate that you didn't have enough money to operate at the moment. We're concerned about the future at this point, right? We all want to keep raising money as we look ahead and go, how long is this going to last? So it's that, I will say that has been a challenge, but also at the same time refreshing that those people who have committed to us are continuing to do that.
Great. Question about from one of the participants, did you create an emergency relief fund or a COVID emergency relief fund? Do we all need this? Is this just the new messaging for annual campaign? Does everybody need to be thinking about this?
I'll jump in and say, yes, we did. I can't speak to what other organizations should do. But we authentically knew we were going to be facing new and increased resources, and we needed to bring those to light. And so we decided to do it. And I think that decision, there are a number of factors, one of which was critically important, was just that, like, is this going to be new and different type funding for what we have to do? And let's just go forward, and can we kind of delineate that? And that's sort of, you put it out there and you try your best to do it. And I think that on our end, there was probably a moment in time where we said, oh, geez, we're probably not going to hit this. And then a week later, here comes this surprise grant, this surprise gift. And we ended up kind of inching towards our goal. So that's the only context I could offer, is that, you have to reflect on your needs within the organization.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing you say is it has to be authentic. Do you really have emergency needs to, and and maybe every organization does at this point. I'm really seeing very few organizations that don't feel impacted by this, whether it's, you know, their family, whether it's a membership organization, religious organization, whatever it is. But I think you're right. Only you can decide if this feels right for you, if that's the kind of ask you need to be making.
Yeah, I think, you know, for us, obviously, we also got, you know, the PPP loan. And so we had that cash flow. You know, we were still getting some, you know, funds from the state. And I think now that, you know, a month or 6 weeks turned into 3 months now, and some of our programs that are not going to even be open until the fall, which is being mandated by the state, that, you know, obviously there is more need for this emergency funds now. But I think for us, you know, as we're launching this summer campaign, it is around, you know, what we've done to keep going during this time and moving forward. And so that, yes, the summer campaign is about obviously keeping us sustainable and of course the money coming in, but we didn't have necessarily a relief fund.
Okay. So we had a question about pausing major gift campaigns. And so if an organization is involved with a capital effort or maybe a legacy or endowment, major gift effort, that kind of effort, what are your thoughts on whether or not it makes sense to kind of plow forward or to pause those major efforts? Jen? Julio?
Yeah, I mean, we're continuing. I mean, I think, you know, at this point, we're moving forward. If there were discussions with donors and, you know, there's a couple even grants that we're looking at that are asking a significant amount of money from foundations. We're moving forward. I think some days it feels as though nothing has changed in the world because we're just kind of doing what we need to do to keep the organization, you know, forward thinking, but also we need to do what we need to do to be sustainable. So I would say yes, in our end.
We're not currently, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We're not currently running any campaigns, but I mean, I think I would say the same thing. We may be doing some work on our building, and that's something we're considering. But yeah, wouldn't see a reason. We're strategic planning at the same time this is all happening, so that's been really interesting. Thank you, Giving Tree and Evolve. But that has financial goals attached to it, right? So that we can achieve those strategies, and we're still putting that plan into motion, and we're budgeting next year accordingly. And yeah, it wouldn't stop us from seeking those funds.
And the only point I would offer is that, you know, when you're making that ask for major gift, you know, that, you know, as the person stewarding the donor, you kind of know when you're ready. And so if you're ready and it's the right time and the context is there, you know, go for it. But along the way, your major gift is the way I know it is, it's more about engagement and relationship building than it is about the asking. The asking is, you know, 1% of the 99% of things that take place. So your major gift strategy continues. It's for me, it's all about engaging the donor in what's happening with the organization, the successes and the challenges along the way.
Agreed. I think I mean, what we're talking to clients about is just having a sense of readiness. And if you have been taking all the right steps in doing those wellness, those check-ins with your donors, and really being very intentional about your touch points and your moves with the donors, you'll know whether or not, like you said, Julio, you'll know whether or not they're ready. You won't feel uncomfortable asking. It's not like you don't know if someone in their family is ill, or you don't know if that person has lost a job or their business is not doing well. You would know those things if you're staying in touch with your donor. And so if that person has been engaged and they've been properly stewarded by the organization, and they understand what challenges lie ahead for you, and they feel and seem ready to be your partner in confronting those challenges, then asking right now could be the best time to ask. So we're doing a lot of having a lot of conversations about the unapologetic ask, and that we cannot make choices for our donors. We can't deprioritize our organization with an assumption that they care more about something else. That's their decision to make. It's our decision to be sure that they have the information that they need about this work, and that they stay engaged, and that we offer them an opportunity to partner with us. So I agree with everything you're saying. Julio, we know that Chicago Commons got a spot in the Chicago Marathon and started to build its donor pool through this program. How will you steward those donors and participants if the race ends up being canceled?
Thanks. And that was actually the advice from Evolve. Jessica and the team, we did 30 minutes of coaching with Evolve, and really ended up being particularly helpful, as we have one of our team members leading this. So we've brought our marathon runners along the journey of what's happening with regards to our COVID response. We're having conversations with them about the fact that there is need, and there is the intent that even if there is a marathon, we can definitely use their support. And then over the course of the next couple months, we're having marathoners sort of pledge, if you will, to continue raising money or not. But also, I think having the awareness that, for some, this may not be in the cards. And so then there's also the opportunity for next year. And so I guess similar to what we're saying is still having that conversation about, here are the challenges that we're facing. You may not be able to actually put, 2 feet in the pavement and go those 26.2 miles. But, in the next few months, we still have a journey to go through with communities, and you can be with us along the way.
Great. Last question. And then again, we're happy to continue answering questions offline. You'll get a follow-up email from my team offering you an opportunity to sign up for coaching. And again, I said we had a bunch of questions about the role the board plays, development committee members, but what are the different things that development committee members and board members can be doing right now to help with fundraising, especially if some of them are not comfortable solicitors? How can we be better engaging our lay leadership? Julio, do you want to start with that one? And then.
Sure. I think some of the, our board members who are not comfortable with soliciting, we've taken 2 steps. Number one is, in regards to our fundraising strategy, especially early on, we were an organization that was heavily event focused. And so having conversations with them about what are they seeing within their firms in terms of sponsorship. So having them sort of be part of that decision-making process and validating the direction that we're taking along the way. Secondly, now for us is the best time to go and share with them our prospect list, right? And share with them, here's who we look to target in the near future. Can you be part of the journey of helping us connect with some of these folks? We may not ask you to solicit immediately, but we're mostly trying to understand how board members can help advance our development program. So those are a couple things along the way for us.
Great. Jenny, any other thoughts?
Well, I know that, as we're going to be starting the summer campaign, we are doing a training with the board next week and having the opportunity to walk them step by step, setting up a page, giving them, some talking points and ideas of how they could talk about our organization and how that will help them in raising money for us.
Great.
Yeah, most of our board is not comfortable making direct asks. And so what we're really asking of them is to make introductions. But also we have been focusing on generating so much content right now. One example is we created a puppet show that helps explain to children what the coronavirus is and what a shelter in place means and all of that. And we're trying to generate as much as we can to help people understand how the arts can really help right now. And so even just asking our board members to share that information, you should really see what this nonprofit's doing right now and how much they're, pivoting and finding new ways to really serve the community. So just giving the board as much information as we can, and probably more than we usually would, so that they can really be those messengers and those ambassadors and help bring more people into our network.
Yeah.
Could not agree more. And in fact, the method that we like is sort of this AAA board strategy originally developed by Kay Sprinkle Grace, where the board is serving as an ambassador, an advocate, or an asker, and sort of picks, maybe some people do all three, but you pick a primary affiliation. And it might be that your key role on the board is to just be a door opener and introduce your executive director or your CEO to people in your network. And in many cases, that's actually more valuable than soliciting the gift. That we have other people who could solicit once the relationship is developed. But if we don't have the board opening their doors to their networks, no one else can do that for them. So if you can help to elevate the status of the door opener or the ambassador, and really expand the definition of fundraising for your board, because the second they hear it, they think, oh, soliciting, I'm not comfortable doing that. But if it becomes a lot more, if thanking a donor for their gift is fundraising, if that really counts as a very important step, if stewardship means something different than I think it does to most people when they first hear it, then all of a sudden you have the board engaged and excited, more excited to participate. On that note, it's 1 o'clock. I want to thank everybody. Obviously, there's more to say on this topic. We'll be back at you next month with some additional webinar options, but I really do want to thank Julio, Jenni, and Jen for their time. They have all volunteered their time to be part of this panel, and we thank you so much for your generosity and your wisdom and your participation. And you will hear from us afterward with a recording of this session and an opportunity to sign up for coaching if that's interesting to you. Thank you again, panelists. Everybody have a great day.